Bad news. This country is really in bad shape. The good news is that we can fix it. And fixing it starts with stopping printing money. Fixing it starts with balancing the federal budget. 3 promises as President of the United States. I promise to submit a balanced budget to Congress in the year 2013. I promise to veto expenditures that exceed revenue. And I promise to advocate on the part of the fair tax, which I think really reboots the American economy for the next 100 years. Other issues that are very important, and most important issue, balancing the federal budget, saving our country. Other issues, end military engagements. Immigration reform, which doesn't mean building a fence. Allowing for marriage equality. Repeal the Patriot Act. Abolish Homeland Security, eliminate TSA, end the drug war, end practices of torture, end the practice of detainment without being charged. We're here in Florida, open up travel and trade with Cuba, free trade, free markets. The Internet, is there anything any one of us wants the government to fix when it comes to the Internet? We don't live in a democracy. We live in a constitutional republic. And I think that's where Democrats have it wrong. They think you can vote yourself a raise, and that has us in the problems that we're in. Republicans think that we are a country governed by law. What Republicans don't understand is that you can repeal bad law. Let's repeal bad law. So I really think that libertarians bring the best of both parties together. And that is the future of this country, and it's really exciting. There is an opportunity here to carry a torch of liberty and freedom to the American public that is really, really hungry to hear this message.
Time. Governor Johnson, what is your position on tax reform?
Well, I advocate for throwing out, and one of the 3 promises that I'm making as President of the United States, I'm promising to advocate on the part of throwing out the entire federal tax system and replacing it with the fair tax. For those of you that haven't checked it out, I would ask you to do that, fairtax.org. But what you're going to do is do away with income tax, you're going to do away with corporate tax, you're going to do away with withholdings, you're going to do away with the IRS. It replaces it with a 23% consumption tax, which over a very short amount of time should be cost neutral. So it's really the answer when it comes to our exports being competitive with our exports costing 23% less. And it's really the answer when it comes to jobs. If in a zero corporate tax rate environment, the private sector does not create tens of millions of jobs, I don't know under what scenario you would have tens of millions of jobs created. I really think that it reboots the American economy for the next 100 years.
All right. Assuming you are all against waste, fraud, and abuse in government, what programs, departments, agencies, czars do you propose to eliminate?
Gary Johnson? I propose eliminating the Department of Education, Homeland Security, and Housing and Urban Development. I'm open to the discussion on elimination of any federal agency whatsoever. I am promising to submit a balanced budget to Congress, so that is a 43% reduction in all of government spending. As governor of New Mexico, I want you to know that good government was easy. It wasn't hard. I controlled all of the agencies. I made appointments to all boards and commissions, as does the President of the United States. So in essence, I controlled all rules and regulations. Waste, fraud, and abuse improved dramatically as a result of being in that position. Don't for a second underestimate that power and the effect that that will have on the federal government, controlling all of these agencies, in essence, being in control of all rules and regulations.
America has many bases overseas. How many of these should we keep open and how many should we close? And how long will it take your administration to take action on this?
Gary Johnson?
We can provide a strong national defense in this country and still cut military spending by 43%. I am promising to submit a balanced budget to Congress, which is a 43% reduction in military spending, which only goes back to the year 2003, which I think surprises a lot of people. But a 43% reduction in military spending involves taking our nuclear warheads from 2,300 down to 500. Do we need to blow up the world 10 times, or might 6 times do? And when it comes to occupying other countries, that needs to be a 43% reduction, although I'd be hard-pressed to know why we should go from 100,000 troops in Europe to 57,000 troops. I'd be hard-pressed to understand why we should have any at all. But it is the presence that we have throughout the world. It's military personnel in uniform, and it's the support staff that goes along with that. It's the entanglements that we're currently involved in. So it's the military engagements that we currently have. It's research and development. It's intelligence. It's across the board.
What is your plan for bringing forth real economic recovery? Is it as simple as cutting spending, going back to a gold standard, and abolishing the Federal Reserve?
Mr. Gary Johnson.
I think the biggest threat to our national security, I think the biggest threat to our economy is that we continue to erode the purchasing power of the dollar by printing money. We need to have strong U.S. dollar policies as opposed to weak U.S. dollar policies. And to do that, fundamentally, you've got to start with slashing spending. So my advocacy for a balanced budget really does address the problem of a weaker dollar, stronger dollar versus weaker dollar. And then I really think that implementing the fair tax, which is a consumption tax, which is cost neutral over a very short amount of time, really does set the stage for economic growth in a really big way. And then as governor of New Mexico, they did a study, which presidential candidate running for office had the best record when it came to jobs. That actually turned out to be me. And when asked, well, what did you do? I said, nothing. Government doesn't create jobs. The private sector does. But I did have an impact. I did have an impact when it came to rules and regulations, which I'm going to argue got better on a daily basis in New Mexico.
Is there a case, or are there any cases, whereby the United States should intervene militarily in a foreign country?
Well, at the heart of any military intervention needs to be a military threat. I argued that there was not a military threat from Iraq, but I thought that our military intervention in Afghanistan initially was totally warranted. We were attacked. We attacked back. And after having been in Afghanistan for 6 months, I think we wiped out al-Qaeda, but that was 11 years ago. We should have gotten out of Afghanistan 11 years ago. I don't think that we should have gotten involved in Libya. There was no military threat. There's nothing in the Constitution that says that because we don't like a foreign leader that we should go in and topple that foreign leader. I voted for McGovern against Nixon. I don't believe there have been any military interventions that we've been engaged in that have really been justified, that have really had at its core a military threat. And Iran right now, we're looking at Iran. That's an unintended consequence of having taken out Iraq, which was Iran's only threat that they woke up every single day to that we took out.
My question is, trade policy and immigration policy are areas where libertarian governors at home would clash with foreign nations' economic policies that favor state control of the economy. How would you address immigration and trade policies in a libertarian administration?
I think that we do need immigration reform, and it doesn't involve building a fence. Don't build a fence. I think that we should make it as easy as possible for somebody that wants to come into this country and work to get a work visa. Not a green card, not citizenship, but a work visa that would entail a background check and a Social Security card so that applicable taxes get paid. We enact the fair tax. Taxes aren't even an issue because fair taxes are unavoidable, whether you're illegal, legal, visitor, citizen. You can't avoid paying the fair tax. With regard to the 11 million illegal immigrants that are here in this country right now, I think we need to set up a grace period by which we can document them. That's the way that we secure the border. The fact that we have 11 million illegal immigrants in this country right now is an unintended consequence of putting government in charge of matching up workers with business. That was a breakdown from day one. And then we need to end the prohibition of drugs because that is the cause of border violence. If we can't connect the dots between 40,000 deaths south of the border with guns, I don't know if we ever will.
Governor Johnson, in the last 10 years, the U.S. has seen a massive stock market crash, followed by a housing crash, followed by publicly funded bailouts and buyouts of large businesses, followed by a soaring debt. What is your remedy, if any, for these calamities?
First of all, I share in the outrage of the Tea Party, which is let's slash spending. But I also share in the outrage of Occupy Wall Street, which is this country doles it out unfairly. Both parties have their hands out, politicians have their hands out, for you to pay them, whether you're an individual, whether you're a group, or whether you're a corporation, for your special favor, for your special comeuppance, for your advantage in the marketplace, as opposed to government creating a level playing field. A level playing field is not any bailouts whatsoever. I was opposed to those bailouts. I'm opposed to any future bailouts. I'm a free market guy. I'm asked, what about criminal prosecution of those on Wall Street? You know what? It's probably because none of them committed any crimes. They just made some incredibly bad decisions that should have been rewarded with them going broke, not us bailing them out, which I'm absolutely outraged over for, and the fact that they're getting bonuses right now.
It seems that you're all in favor of drug re-legalization, yet there are 3 million in the United States jails. More than half for drug usage. Some characterize the war on drugs as a war on our children. How would you deal with this problem of so many inmates in jail?
We have the highest incarceration rate of any country in the world. We have 2.3 million people behind bars. China has 5 times the population, and they have half of they have 1.5 million behind bars, and yet we have 2.3 million people behind bars. So something that I did as the profile of over half of those in federal prison are those that have sold small amounts of drugs on numerous occasions and been caught, mandatory sentencing. So one of the untold stories, my understanding of the prohibition of alcohol was that after we repealed the prohibition of alcohol, there was this systematic going through and making pardons to those that had been convicted and then actually commuting sentences of those that were in jail. As governor of New Mexico, I made a pledge to commute any sentences in jail for those that were there on strictly use. At that point, I came up with the fact that most of the people in state prison had other crimes associated with that. But that's one of my pledges. Grant pardons to those who have been convicted of nonviolent drug crimes.
Is simulated drowning or waterboarding torture? If not, what would you define torture? And what action would you take against people who have performed this in the past?
I would immediately stop the practice of torture, and I would immediately stop the practice of detainment without being charged. I think this is why we fought wars in this country, is to prevent this kind of situation. I'm not the person to go back and prosecute past. I think that we should go forward, and going forward, these are unacceptable practices.
Many Americans are proud of the social safety net this country has created over the last 100 years, and they're afraid that a Libertarian administration will harm that. As president, what will you tell these people?
I'm promising to submit a balanced budget to Congress in the year 2013. That's a 43% reduction in Medicaid and Medicare. And what I tell anyone who falls off the chair with regard to Medicare, you're going to cut Medicare by 43%? You know what? If we don't cut it by 43%, we're not going to have Medicare. There will be no safety net. What we have to do is balance the federal budget, and in this case, we have to cut this spending by 43%. I reformed Medicaid in the state of New Mexico. based on my experience with Medicaid, I believe I could have overseen the reform of Medicaid in New Mexico and Medicare in New Mexico if the federal government would have given the state 43% less money and given me the power as governor of New Mexico, no strings, no mandates, on how to deliver the health care services to the poor and those over 65. That's my proposal when it comes to reforming Medicaid and Medicare. Give it to the states, 50 laboratories of best practice.
Have you a short list in mind for your vice presidential candidate and, after Election Day, for members of your cabinet, perhaps even some of your neighbors on the stage?
Well, for starters, I hope this is a problem that I have to have. So I don't presume to get the Libertarian nomination, but if that were the case, you'd arguably like to have somebody that's really high profile, that's someone who's renowned, someone who people know, and someone that can articulate just exactly what everybody on stage here is articulating. So in that sense also, or in that context, there isn't anyone on stage that I would not choose. And I also understand that the Libertarian Party chooses the nominee, although the nominee themselves get to suggest.
In your opinion, who was the best past president and why? And also, which candidate that's ran in the past for the Libertarian Party do you consider the best candidate that we've had in the past?
I'd go for Thomas Jefferson. I think that he was a statesman first and foremost. That here was somebody who knew several languages and really was very humble in the office, and it was citizen service and had nothing to gain and served this country immeasurably. And probably every single president that has served fits in that same category. And then when it comes to libertarians, I'll just put a vote across the board. I think libertarians, regardless of who the candidate has been, have raised the awareness of consciousness. Libertarians, for me, have raised the issue of raised the drug issue first and foremost. Libertarians, I've always looked for the argument that you can't deny, and
do you support repeal laws compelling acceptance of government-issued money, so legal tender laws?
Do I support competing currency laws? Yes, I do. I think that Reagan commissioned a study on how we could return to commodity-based currency, the gold standard, and that was a report that had Alan Greenspan, that had Milton Friedman on it, among others, that came up with a plan, competing currencies, to actually be able to achieve that. So yes, I do support going back to commodity-based currency, gold standard, and to do that, we do that through competing currencies, and that has been a study that's been completed, so it's just dusting off that study.
After you're sworn in as president, are you going to establish in priority what's going to get your attention? For example, the terrorist threat, or energy policy, or treaties with the UN or NATO, or spending, taxation, or restoring the Constitution?
So day one really starts after you're elected, and I would draw on my experience as governor, and it would be the same as president of the United States. Day one started right after I was elected governor, and that was to immerse myself in the dollars and cents of, in New Mexico, the dollars and cents of state government. What are we spending our money on, and what are we getting for the money that we're spending? And spent several weeks, 4 hours a day for several weeks, immersing myself in the state budget. And after that immersion, I actually met with the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House at a meeting before I was inaugurated, and realized that I knew more about the budget than they did, and they had served cumulatively for about 50 years. So that's what I would do. I would immerse myself in this budget to understand the beans better than anybody else, because I found that to be incredibly powerful as governor of New Mexico, that you could speak from knowledge and that people would understand what you were saying.
We'll now go to the 3-minute close.
I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't think there was the possibility of actually winning. Maybe that just sounds crazy to everybody sitting here, but maybe it is crazy. But here's how it works. Is that if the Libertarian nominee, if the Libertarian nominee gets 5% of the general election vote, the Libertarian Party will receive $90 million, which I think really has a huge positive impact on Libertarians' nationwide organization. Now that's after the election. And then there's the pie in the sky scenario over the Libertarian presidential candidate polling at 15% and being on stage in the national debates against President Obama, and I'm believing that the nominee is going to be Romney. And if you think that's far-fetched, I was in a poll a couple of weeks ago against Romney and Obama, and I polled at 9%. Now, if anyone else here on stage were in that poll, they'd probably be at that same number. I think Mickey Mouse would have been at 15%. But it's an opportunity. It's a huge opportunity. So I'm a classical liberal. I'm somebody who believes in less government. I'm somebody, period. I'm somebody who believes that the best thing that government can do for you and I is to leave decisions for you and I with you and I. So on the credentials, when it comes to fiscal conservancy, I vetoed 750 bills while I was governor of New Mexico. That was real. I may have vetoed more bills than the other governors, all the other governors combined. And then the ACLU did a report here a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if you saw it, but this was on civil liberties, and they did this among all the presidential candidates. 24 was a perfect score. Santorum and Romney were at 0. Gingrich was at 4. President Obama was at 16. Ron Paul was at 18. And Gary Johnson was at 21. So I'm really proud of that. I believe I'm delivering the same message as Ron Paul. I don't think Ron Paul is going to be successful in his run for the Republican nomination. So I'm hoping that whoever the nominee, and if it's me, I'm going to pick up that Ron Paul torch of libertarian ideas in August and carry that forward with the opportunity to make a huge difference in this country. Thank you very much.